With the workplace landscape constantly changing, it's super important to understand what rights you have as an employee. Because of this, I'm joined by my good friend Joanna Briggs, founder of What Matters, to delve into all the rights you need to know and understand as an employee in 2025. Hi Joanna, how are you today?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm so excited to have you on the
honestly,
podcast.
it's the smiles for me. Yeah.
Guys, Joanna's one of my really, really good friends.
Literally.
And she's a great content creator who chats about all things careers. But for those who don't know you, please introduce yourself to everyone listening.
Of course, my name is Joanna Briggs. I am a career content creator, so career/personal development, and I'm also the founder of What Matters CIC, which is a career consultancy.
Gosh, I love it. And I love the work you do.
Thank
and
you.
I'm so excited to delve into the topic we're going to chat about today, because I feel like so many things are changing, like whether you can work from home or not, what counts as sick leave, maternity leave, all these things, right?
Yeah.
Especially in 2025, I think it's really important people go into the year knowing their rights as an employee. So if things aren't working out, they know what they can do, who they can speak to, etc., etc. But before we delve into all of that, I feel like because I know you so well, I want everyone who's listening to the podcast to know you a little bit better too. So I've got a couple of quick fire questions for you.
Okay, fine.
You ready?
I'm ready.
So the first one I've got is, what's one guilty pleasure you like to spend your money on?
So it's going to be Ubers. I did.
Got an Uber to the studio, guys.
I did. Only because it's just a comfortability thing. It's kind of like if you wake up and you feel like public transport's going to ruin your day, and especially like if you know like work's really annoying or whatever, it's the small things. Like I'm not endorsing, but I am saying like I do think if they had a membership, like my name would probably be pink because I take them all the time, platinum member.
You do.
Like,
you
so
actually do.
bad.
You're like, hi, I'm on my way, but sorry, just stuck in traffic. And I'm just like, traffic? You're in the middle of London.
Literally.
Like, sorry, do you know?
I don't drive.
No train, no tube.
I know.
You'd assume bus, but no, it's always Uber with you.
No, exactly, literally. So yeah.
But we listen, we don't
Uber
judge.
is, thank you.
Listen, we don't judge.
Thank you.
And I guess if you had another question for you, if you had to give your younger self one piece of financial advice, what would it be?
That is such a good one. I think, okay, this really counts for other people who are spenders like myself, but do not trust yourself if you know that you're a bad spender. Trust processes. So one thing about me, like when I started to realize, okay, every month I am hitting zero, no matter what, like how much I was earning with promotions or anything, I actually had to start relying on automation. So like making sure that I knew where my money was going. So don't trust yourself. Don't think, oh yeah, with the next promotion, I'm going to be better, or with like better discipline because I really feel like it, like new year, new me. Just don't do it. Like help yourself, help your current or your future self with the decisions that you're making. So yeah, don't trust yourself.
That's so interesting. And you know what? I agree. I think, especially as we like progress through 2025 now, I feel like loads of people would have set themselves financial goals, targets back in January, either forgotten about them or haven't put systems in place to help them actually achieve that goal. So I actually love the fact that you're actually a self-aware queen and understood that.
Thanks.
And would tell your younger self that, because I think sometimes we don't self-reflect enough, and I actually really like the idea you came up with there.
Thank you.
But I guess as well, we're obviously, like I mentioned, we're here to delve into employee rights and all that good stuff. Before we delve into all the employee rights we need to know in 2025, what actually encouraged you or inspired you to start creating content online?
That is, you know, it was never part of the plan.
Really?
Like creating content, like I really wanted to separate my like personal self or like personality from work. But it all started with the idea of me even starting What Matters, because at the time when I was younger, I used to be so naive in thinking that if you work hard, you're going to achieve. Like that's literally it. I didn't really like go into anything with like biases or like different barriers. I just thought, no, work hard and you're going to get there. And that's how I always felt like I had done it until I had like my first job. I was working in Roehampton University and I was a director at the time. So I was like a SAB, which is like a sabbatical officer.
Okay.
And in that role, you get so much oversight on the back end of like organizations, how grading is like organized, how we classify degrees. And I started to think, hold on, like so much is decided off the fact of like who you know, whether someone is grading you because like after they've had breakfast or before, like just general like human nature that's actually informing like bigger decisions for someone else. And I started to think, well, if I had that naivety, someone else is going to be thinking the same, but not everyone is going to be in the position that I am in this position to know any different. So then I thought, right, if I see the problem, I want to be part of the answer. So that's how I started the business. And then off of that, when I started to like post on Instagram, it was the usual like image post that I was doing, and it just weren't working. Like no engagement, like weren't really hitting.
Yeah.
But one thing I know about myself is like, I do have a personality. So I thought, do you know what? Like, let's just try. Like, let's just try something. And TikTok was happening. I was like, I'm not a dancer. I'm not this. I'm not that. Like, it's careers. Like, no one's going to find that interesting. But I quit my job in finance. And on that day, because that's when like I felt like I had more confidence, I was like, right, I'm going to post my first video. And I did. And like, believe it or not, in a day and age where everyone's always like upset with the 200 views, I got 200 views and I was like, we've really got something here, guys.
Famous girl.
I was like 200, like off the first video. I was like, yes. Anyway,
that was good going for a first video, though. It's not zero,
right? Anyway, so done that, but obviously, when you keep getting that, then you start thinking, oh, tough pill to swallow. Until we then got like momentum, and I thought, oh no, actually, like people are finding this helpful. And then afterwards I started to curate like what that looks like. How do we want to develop? How did I want to differentiate myself in the business from other maybe recruitment agencies? And that's how it started.
And you have popped off since.
Gosh, thank you.
Genuinely so proud of your growth. Also, I love enjoying your content anyway. Like when it comes up on my view page on my personal account, I'm like, go girl, like, share.
Gosh.
Like, because I feel like creating content is so hard, especially when it's when you're trying to help people. Sometimes that's not always the popular content online, but you've made it work, and you are genuinely helping lots of people. Which is why I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today, because I feel like you knowing the knowledge you have, I think everyone who listens to the podcast needs to know it and hear it, right? So obviously we're chatting all things employee rights. So what are the employee rights people should be aware of in 2025?
It's literally like, if we were to go through all of them, it would take up the whole podcast. But I think a couple of my like top ones that I think most people should be most concerned about is unfair dismissal, and also unpaid working time. So if we start with unfair dismissal, I think a lot of people, when thinking about that, everyone's aware that if you've been working in a company for 2 years or more, that's where you can maybe like, challenge the company more, or like that's where they take things seriously. And I think a lot of people feel really like hard done by if they're fired before that 2-year mark. And they often feel quite helpless, like nothing can be done because the law, it doesn't protect them. But that's not actually the case, because depending on what the dismissal is and what it comes around, you can still really fight it with like a lot of conviction. So if it's anything to do with like pregnancy, whistleblowing, for example, if you were asked to do something really inappropriate by like a senior leader, and like you went down the whistleblowing route and then they got rid of you, 100% you can still challenge that. Anything to do with like caring or like care leavers or anything like that, that's what you should really be focusing on. So don't kind of be deflated if anything happens between month 1 and year 2. You can still kind of fight that. So don't feel like you have no protection whatsoever.
Okay, that's good.
Because a lot of people, and it does happen because companies, not just your 6-month probation period, but after that, they do rely on that quite a lot. But even our current government are trying to do way more as well on like trying to improve workers' rights. So don't feel like abandoned or like high and dry. And then definitely, I think unpaid working time. So in efforts for people to feel like they're like team players and they're really doing a lot of people think, I'm going to work through my lunch, or I'm not going to take my breaks, or I'm going to do overtime and all that stuff. And yes, like time and place, if you really like your job and you know that there's a project that really needs to be done, the odd time won't hurt. But you have to remember that contractually, your lunch hour is never paid for unless it's said otherwise in your contract. So therefore, you are always on the regular, as long as you're not taking your breaks, giving way more to a company that if you were to hand in your resignation, they're already looking to get someone else in. So always just remember, your company aren't paying you because they like you or because you're so amazing. Like, they're doing it because it's a contract. You're offering a service and they're paying for that. You're offering a skill and they're paying for that. So also, create boundaries around that, and don't kind of feel like you have to give, because oftentimes it will never really be reciprocated in the way that you're hoping for.
Those 2 points are so crucial. One, in a time where redundancies and layoffs are so high right now. And also 2, where people feel like they owe a lot to the jobs that they're being given. I think the word that you said there, boundaries, is so important. And also, I feel like it's so important that people actually read their contract yearly or monthly just to
Yeah.
refresh their memory and what they've signed up to. Because I know so many friends that have signed up to a 40-hour week and they're doing 60, 70 hours, and they probably don't even know how many hours they're contracted to now because they've been there for 2-3 years. So I think reviewing your contract is so important as well. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I think, like, exactly like you're saying, a company's job is also not to remind you of your value.
So true.
You know, like, it's not in their interest for you to know how valuable you are or how valuable your time is. It's in their interest for you to stay ignorant and also, like, just continue with the culture that they've set in their company. So you have to be really active in, like, creating what that looks like for you and making sure that you're getting as much out of a company or out of an opportunity as you possibly can whilst you're there. So yeah, definitely reviewing your contract, making sure you're understanding how different policies whilst you're in a company is changing and how that may affect the contract that you originally signed. Just always having those conversations and being really active in your career is as important as anything else.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I guess, you know, there's probably many people listening to the podcast, watching the podcast, that are probably starting their very first job or they're like early days in their career. How important is it to be aware of their workers' rights from day one? And where can they go to learn more about their workers' rights? Because I feel like, I think when you get given a job, you're just like, yeah, this is my contract and that's it. And I think we forget as human beings, may I add, we have rights. So how important is it to check them?
It's so important because especially I think in a day and age where there's so much information about how you should conduct yourself, work, relationships, personal, all of that stuff, you can really get swept up in how you think you should behave in situations like that. But ultimately, like, we are living in a governed world, and when you're at work, like, they also have to be upheld to a certain standard to make sure that you're safe, physically, mentally, all of those things. So from the get-go, you need to understand what you're getting yourself into and also how much you're willing to sacrifice, because like I said, the company's not going to remind you or tell you of your worth. And I think if anyone is confused as to, like, what more can happen or what more they should know whilst they're on their career journey, I would say, first of all, like DWP, that's Department for Work and Pension, so that's the government website. That's just more for you to understand what direction the government is headed in when we have a change in government, so that you can start to inform, okay, maybe more investment is going into tech or sustainability or whatever, especially if you're looking for more money. But also ACAS, so that is an independent free body, similarly to the Citizens Advice Bureau, where you are just able to speak to someone and understand what not only your workers' rights are, but if you're going through any challenges, any disputes, anything like that, and you can just get legal and independent kind of support whilst you're doing that. And also why I would recommend ACAS as well is because a lot of companies, when they're writing their policies, do it off the back of ACAS's like definitions of things like bullying, harassment and discrimination. So if you're ever going through things like that in your workplace, it's always good to know how is it defined and how do they suggest like combating that, because that's often how most companies, not all, but most companies will try and like resolve those disputes.
I think it's so important that you shared that, because I'm not gonna lie, I've never been a corporate girly, and I've said this many times on the podcast, but some of the stories I hear about what goes on in the workplace is insane.
I always think it would make such a good movie.
Genuinely, like it's like a series of Love Island or like maybe even worse. I don't know, because some of the stories are actually like crazy. I'm like, your manager said what? Like it's crazy. And I guess with that being said, for those people who maybe feel like they are, maybe their workers' rights have been violated or they don't feel safe in the workplace, what can they do?
So I think, you need to first understand like what has been violated and like on what spectrum or what scale. So for example, if it's something that you can deal with locally, i.e. we were speaking about unpaid and working time, right? If you're realizing that your manager's just giving you a lot of work, maybe you're really trusted, you're really efficient, all of that stuff, but you're realizing, that means like I never really take my 1 hour lunch, my 20-minute break, here, there, everywhere, I'm like working really late. That's something that maybe you can have a conversation with your manager to say, hey, like I'm just noticing I'm doing a lot. We've got other people in the team. Can this be distributed? And then change that way. Equally, it could just be a company culture thing where you've joined a team where you notice like, no one really takes breaks. I remember when I worked in HR, I kid you not, every lunchtime, and I would have headaches and I would be so hungry, but no one else was getting up from their desk.
That is the worst.
Literally. And I was like, okay, it looks like I'm gonna work.
Oh,
Because
gosh.
it was just so hard. And I do get it. Like, it is so hard when you're like, you feel like you're fighting against the grain when everyone else is doing it. But once again, that has to be a boundary that you set for yourself. I'm just going to get up and go. So those things you can do like locally. However, if it's something a bit bigger that you're thinking, right, I don't think I can challenge this alone, or I really don't know where to get started, that's when you want to start looking at joining a union perhaps, or if you're already joining a union, then speaking to your union rep. Once again, going to like independent advisors like ACAS, like the Citizens Advice Bureau, and really just trying to understand, what can I actually do? I think also a lot of the time with things like unfair dismissal, with things like discrimination or harassment and things, people often leave, in frustration and anger, but they also don't know that, for example, you can request a DSAR, which is a data subject access request, sometimes just known as a SAR as well, where you can basically ask your company for all of your information, and that will typically look like any emails, any Teams messages, any like anything with your name on it, you will get, which will then paint a picture as to what may have happened if you were facing something that was like quite unfavorable or unfair. So yeah, it's things like that people need to be wary of, but once again, the company's not going to tell you because it's not in their interest to give you all of that information.
Never heard of DSAR in my life.
Yeah.
And I'm sure many of you guys listening probably haven't either.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't either until I worked in HR, and I thought, oh my gosh, like, it's insane, like, really. And it's pages and depending on how long you've been there, but it is pages. And then I had my own experience as well when I was working in an organization. I requested it, and again, pages, and I was only there for 6 months, but it pieced together exactly what happened before I left. Yeah. And I was like, it was you. But
I wasn't the problem.
No, exactly. I was like, you said that and you done this, because you can paint a picture of like this person then messaged this person, and you're thinking, oh, it was a plan, like, but yeah, so like things like that, it's just good to know. Because sometimes there will always be people who take advantage or like manipulate the system, but for those who genuinely need it and who actually need like hard evidence, or they've really gone through something, these are things that you really do need to know, because it's black and white. Yeah.
Wow, this is why I have you on the podcast.
Thanks.
Things that I will never have a clue on, and this is why I bring professionals and experts on to discuss this stuff. But I guess one word you mentioned there was union, right? Yeah. What is a union, and how can people go about joining one?
Absolutely. So I will start by saying not every company offers a union. Like for example, when I was in finance, I don't think I ever heard about unions. I think there's independent ones that you can use. But if you're working like the public sector, oftentimes like unions are quite big. Yes. And typically it is just an independent source of support for all employees. Doesn't matter what hierarchy you're in an organization. And if you are facing an issue, challenge with management, systems, cultures, anything that happens at work, you can speak to the union and they will offer you a rep to provide some guidance. If you were called in for a disciplinary, for example, oftentimes you'll be given the opportunity to bring an aide. That could be your union rep. And they're not really there to speak on your behalf. And sometimes I think people get confused with like lawyers and a union rep. A lawyer can be there to advocate for you. A union rep is just more there to not facilitate a conversation, but to say, if a process isn't being followed. Okay. So let's say we're having a conversation and then all of a sudden I'm like, right, I'm going to get up. It's for the union rep to say, oh, sorry, like that's not how this meeting ends. Okay. It's just more like the procedural things. And then they can speak to you as the individual that they're supporting to say, look, I think before the meeting, these are the things that you should be focusing on, and so on and so forth. It's also typically something that you pay into. And most unions don't like you to just start paying when you need them. So it is advisable for you to pay when you join an organisation, and then when you need them, it's almost like, well, you've paid into the system, it's now free for you to use. It's not to say that they'll reject you, but it is just to say, like, they may just be like, oh,
Cool, might not fight your corner as hard.
Yeah, exactly, maybe.
No, that's so interesting. I guess when it comes to like employee rights, I think one thing that's really important when you join a workplace is your contract, right? Yeah. So for those maybe joining a new job sometime this year, because I'm hoping not everyone stays in one job for the rest of their lives. Yeah. When it comes to negotiating contract, what are some best practices and what should people be looking for in their contract?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think best practice, first of all, is not just asking for what you think is going to get you the yes. I think a lot of people think, oh, right, okay, right now I'm on 20K, so I'm just going to ask for 25 because like that feels like a normal jump. But that's not the case. If you're actually looking for 50K, ask for that amount.
Yeah.
I also think number 2, contextualize your ask. So for example, if you realize that you're joining a company where your skills and your experience are incredible assets to that organization and it's in line with what the organization is doing, then don't second guess what you're asking for, because they're going to see the value in what you're doing. Equally, conversely, if you're, pivoting in your career and you're like, oh, don't really have that much experience and I'm currently on 50K, it may be that you're looking to take a pay cut in advance of you then getting the experience and then moving up. So I would say, those 2, ask for what you want, not just what you think is getting you the yes, and also contextualize your ask. But then I would also say, don't just think about negotiating the amount of money that you're getting. You can negotiate your time. You can negotiate how long your breaks are, when you start, when you leave work. There are so many things, but no one really talks about that because everyone's focused on like getting an increase in salary. But sometimes you may just want like a better work-life balance. You may want to include the fact that you do need every Wednesday off to be with your children or to do something else, volunteer, whatever. You can negotiate that in your contract, and you don't always have to go through an agency. Typically, I do know that the idea is, if you're doing it through an agency, obviously they'll fight for you harder because they're getting money off the back end. But you can do it yourself and just have a really candid conversation. Usually by the time you're at the point of negotiating your salary, negotiating your contract, you've already passed the stages. They've already told you that they want you for the job. So it's a bit, you're coming in as a bit more of an equal. So, come in professionally and just say, hey, like, thank you so much. Really love this job. Really looking forward to working with you. However, the offer just weren't really in line with what I was looking for. I wondered if you can go back and see if we can meet XYZ here and include whatever that looks like. And once again, I think also going in just not assuming that you're just going to get what you want because you ask as well. It's kind of just having that mind frame of being like, it's a conversation. And if they really come back and say, oh, Ola, like, we really love you, but I'm really sorry, we cannot do this at this time, or we're going to have to revisit, hold them to the revisit, find out when that is. Is that after probation? Is that after a year? But then just evaluate whether it is something that you're happy to do, because either you'll get the company on your CV or like the experience and then work through it that way. But it's not just money that you can negotiate. You can negotiate time.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I feel like a lot of people are constantly looking at the money, which is really important, don't get me wrong, but it is also the boundaries, like, okay, how many hours am I working? Can I work from home?
That's it.
Can I maybe, if I work extra hours, can I maybe take that back as time in lieu, so I get a bit more like holiday leave? Like that. I think a lot of people forget about the non-tangible stuff in their contract. So guys, 2025, make sure you consider that as well. And I guess pay transparency is another big one in the workplace, right? I've heard some facts, myths, I don't know, because again, I'm not a corporate girly, but I've heard that some workplaces, it's okay to talk about pay, like salaries. Other companies, it's really bad to talk about salary. So what is the real tea on pay transparency in the workplace?
So pay transparency is okay anywhere you go. The only time that you will find that pay transparency is a taboo is more of a company culture issue. It's not illegal. It's not a problem. It is just a company culture issue. If you're working in a place where most people are getting paid like equally, it shouldn't really be a problem. And I know, like, we live in the UK, so already money is like, it makes us skin crawl. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We don't like talking about it. But if anyone makes you feel like asking, oh, like, you've just joined, like, what did they offer you at the very least, and making you feel like that, like you're doing something incredibly wrong, it's not wrong at all. I think when it comes to employers sharing salaries, now, once again, it's not necessarily illegal, but it's also very frowned upon, once again, because it's like confidentiality, it's other people's information. So unless they get the go ahead from that individual, it's not really something that they would do. But the things that they do have to be, or they are mandated, to share annually are things like gender pay gaps. It's things like race gaps. It's bonus gaps across your organization. And that is shared usually in a report. And oftentimes they are mandated to put it on a website as well, public forums. So what I would implore people to do, if they're realizing that actually they work in a company that people don't really share what they're being paid, is to look at those reports and understand what it means for you. So for myself as a Black woman, what does this report tell me about me working with other counterparts? Myself as someone who with a disability, what does this tell me? And really look at that to allow you to frame how you may want to move forward. Also, don't be afraid if you're noticing seeing things like this, to go to your like HR business partners or HR advisors just to say, hey, like I saw the report came out. I was just wondering what as an organization we were doing to close this gap, because for me as a insert whatever, I find that this is quite like disturbing or challenging, or, you know, it's hard to feel like a valued member of the organization when I'm seeing that the gap, the bonus gap between this grade and that is like 60%, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, be really like active there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a controversial question.
Yeah.
Do you think people should talk about their salaries more in the workplace?
I genuinely do. I really, really do. And it's annoying because I do also see why people may not want to. Because number one, like if they really do know they're getting paid more than others, like that may just be like daggers for no reason.
Yeah.
But also it could be you faced with like the reality of you not being paid as much as others. And that's really embarrassing too.
Yes,
especially
so
if you know that you're like working really hard and like all of that stuff. But the only way that anything can change is like with knowledge, and knowledge really is power. So if you are just holding that in and just hoping for the best, you know, it's not gonna work. And once again, it allows companies to get away with really treating whoever they want, however they want.
Yeah.
And again, I think when I worked in HR, and obviously like you have access to like everyone's salaries and things, and you do just kind of look and think, wow, like that is just such a shame, you know, like, you know, you do just think that's so unfair. Like how did we get here, you know?
And have you seen really big discrepancies?
Absolutely. In the same like job roles.
Wow.
Absolutely. But once again, you find like if you don't ask, you don't get either. Like everyone just assumes that it's just not a done thing. Everyone thinks, oh, it's always for someone else. It's like the person on TikTok, the person on Instagram doing their story time. It's not for me. But how do you know what's for you if you're never asking? If you don't go to your manager and say, look, like I'm always getting these awards. I'm always being like told how valuable I am, and I'm doing these projects and things, but it's actually not being compensated. Can we look at what that looks like in the mid-year review, in the end-of-year review? You don't know what is going to come of that. Yeah. But if you're always just coasting, thinking, oh no, I'm just going to get another job, I'm going to move on, well then you'll never know. You could be in a company that you really like and be getting paid more. You have to fight for what you want.
Yeah.
Because other people are. I'm telling you, you're working with people who are, and they're doing less than you and getting paid more. You know, so.
And it's so bad.
It's
like,
so
I'm not
bad.
noticing the fact that it doesn't happen. Like, I know it happens.
Yeah.
But it's awful.
Yeah.
It's awful. Like there was one time we had a lady on the podcast who shared someone she knew managed to negotiate a 40k pay increase because the company didn't want her to move to another company.
I'm telling you. And it's always when you leave, all of a sudden they've got bags of money.
It's like your car insurance. Car insurance is giving you a discount because you're about to go to someone else cheaper.
Right.
And also they've got the 20%, 25% discounts.
Where was that before? Like, please, where was that before? Like, all of a sudden, we've got money. Well, like, or like eating ramen noodles. Do you know what I mean?
No,
like,
guys, because please take your paper out for this next question, because obviously, as we go through 2025, people will be moving jobs. People may sadly be getting made redundant. So people will be looking for jobs this year. It's inevitable, right? So do you have any general career advice for those navigating the workplace this year?
Yeah, definitely. I would say be active in your career. Do not be passive. Do not think that your work's going to speak for itself, or that someone's just going to look at you one day and think, oh my gosh, like you're a star. Like, you know, it's not happening. Like it does not happen. You have to be active. You have to ask for what you want. You have to like challenge bad behavior. You have to be in it to win it. I also think that like the idea of, you know, I don't really want to like play the corporate game to get far. I just want it to be X. I just want to be treated fairly. Once again, that's not the way of the world. Unfortunately, that's not where we are. The corporate game is called a game because there's so much politics at play. There are so many other things that are happening that you're not seeing. So if you are in it to win, you have to understand the principles, which are understanding like how to speak to people, how to network, how to build relationships, and what's actually important as you're climbing. So kind of don't be defeated by what may feel like manipulation or that you're being fake. Just see it as, unfortunately, you're having to amp up a certain side of yourself to get further. It's the same way as how like I'm hoping most of us wouldn't speak to our parents as we would our friends,
Yes.
as we would our partners, because you understand the audience. You know,
Yes.
you understand the audience. So it's just more, see it like that, less than the corporate game, or more just like speak to your audience. And I think the last thing is also make sure you're getting from the company as much as you're giving, if not more. So make sure you're going to those networking events. Make sure you're seeing or finding your ways into opportunities that will reap rewards for even when you leave a company. So if you know that, for example, you're in like the tech space, but you know that you want to get better in public speaking, see what projects they have that will allow you to exercise that skill, even if it's outside of your job remit, because those are the things that you can rely on later on. Like, you want to see your time at a company as valuable, not just because you're doing your job well and that's what people are applauding you for, but also so that when you leave, you feel like you're taking something else with you, a qualification, a new skill, or a new relationship with someone that can help you down the line.
Yeah, wow. Those 3 tips were perfect. And I think the way you articulate them is beautiful, in the way that I think hopefully you guys listening at home have at least found one nugget of advice that you can actually implement in 2025. Because I think, like you said, the corporate workplace is a game, and you have to know how you play it well. Otherwise, you get left behind.
You really do, and they will leave you, because someone has to be left. We don't want it to be you. But someone has to be left. So and let's get on the horse.
And I think it's really important that it's not you guys, genuinely, because I wouldn't have this podcast otherwise. And Joanna, you shared amazing words of advice throughout this session today, and I'm just so glad to have you as a friend who has all this expert knowledge, because I know I can always seek you when I need to. Because like you said, the workplace is cutthroat. We don't want to be left behind, especially not in 2025, because it's the year we financially thrive. But like I mentioned, you share great careers content online. So if anyone listening or watching the podcast would like to follow you, where can they go to do so?
Absolutely. So you can go on TikTok or Instagram. I'm Joanna.Briggs on all of them. Also, What Matters CIC is the business page as well. And we're there. We're thriving. Looking forward to. We really want to like host more events this year, inspired by you.
Love that.
Genuinely. So we want to do more of that. And also, if anyone, like, shameless plug, anyone wants to be part of like creating like more of like a career community / membership that we're looking at building, and you want to be part of like the beta group and like helping with what do you want to call it, building and being part of the focus group, that's it, then please drop us a DM or myself personally, and then we'll put you down on the list.
Amazing. Well, guys, as always, all of the links will be in the podcast description. So please do go check out Joanna, because she's smashing it on the content. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.